We are almost halfway through 2024, so I figured it's a good time to update you on some of my favorite boots of the year so far. There have been some great new releases, but also some strong models continuing from last year. So in this video, I'm going to go over 10 of my personal favorites and ones I would recommend. And at the end of the video, if you're interested in picking up a pair, check the links in the description where you can find them on sale with exclusive discount codes. All right, without further ado, let's get into the video. And to kick off our list, we have the New Balance Fon V7 Pro. Now, this is the Plus edition that I have here and one that I just recently reviewed. And I was a huge fan of the V7 Pro that was released last year. It was such an amazing football boot. And essentially the V7 Plus just continues on that same trajectory. It's extremely comfortable. The hypo-knit upper that features on the Fon here is one of the best synthetic uppers that I think I've seen on almost any football boot. New Balance features the same hypo-knit material across a few other boots in their line that we'll get to later, but it's just so soft. And I think what really makes this boot stand out compared to some other models is just the anatomical shape of the toe box. So many other big brands, I find that they just tend to taper a little bit too aggressively as they get towards the front of the toe box, but that's just not an issue that you get with the Furons here. And on top of that, New Balance is one of the only brands on the entire market that offers standard and wide variations of their football boots. So I got the Fon V7 here in the standard width, and for me, that was perfect. But if you're a player that has particularly wide feet and it's something you struggle with other models, you can go for that wide variation. They're also crazy lightweight. There's only one boot on this list that's going to be lighter than this one, and they also have a very snappy and aggressive sole plate with all of these chevron bladed studs. One thing I would note towards New Balance is that I wish that you could pick up an AG variation of this boot a little bit more easily. It's pretty hard to find a version of this sole plate that has conical studs, so I wouldn't necessarily say that they're the best for use on playing on artificial grass. However, if you do play on firm ground natural grass most of the time, these are going to be a great option. And before we move on, we know that physical fitness is one of the most important things as a footballer, but your mental well-being is equally important. As a player, I've always been taught to push through pain, be mentally tough, and never show any sign of weakness. And especially as a guy, I know that reaching out for help can sometimes be looked down upon. But the truth is, your mental health deserves as much attention as your physical health. And athletes can put themselves under so much pressure, it's easy to forget the toll that it takes. Reaching out for support is a sign that you're self-aware enough to know when you need help and you're brave enough to seek it out. And that's where BetterHelp, the sponsor of today's video, comes in. BetterHelp is an online therapy platform that makes it easy for you to get the mental health support you need on your own terms. With BetterHelp, you can connect to a licensed therapist in the comfort of your own home through video chats, phone calls, or even messaging. They have a network of over 30,000 therapists, so you can find the right fit for you. And if you're not satisfied with your therapist, you can switch at any time with no extra cost. So if you're struggling with your mental health or just need a little extra support, I highly recommend giving BetterHelp a try. Go to betterhelp.com/upper90football or select upper 90 football at sign up to get a special discount off your first month of therapy. Your mental health is worth prioritizing, and BetterHelp makes it easy to do just that. And speaking of extremely lightweight football boots, one of the only ones that's lighter than the Fon V7, we have the next boot on our list, and that's the Adidas X Crazy Fast. Now, the X Crazy Fast .1 is obviously extremely lightweight, but it also feels that way on feet. They've got just a razor thin upper that gives you such a close touch on the ball, and some people are going to complain that they don't offer a ton of protection, and if that's what you're looking for in a pair of football boots, these probably aren't going to be the best option for you. But if you want to feel really connected with the ball, if you want almost that barefoot-like sensation, this is going to be one of the best options you can go for. And another thing to note about the X Crazy Fast .1 is that they're also a big improvement on their predecessor, which was the X Speed Portal. I think Adidas took a lot of notes from that model that wasn't actually a huge success, and they ended up making it a lot better. The knit collar is really comfortable, and the toe box doesn't tighten too much at the front of the boot, so even me with my slightly wider feet didn't find any discomfort. And while the other top-end Adidas models are good, like the Predator Elite that just came out, as well as the Copa Pure 2 that's relatively new, I still think the X Crazy Fast is one of the best top-end models that Adidas makes. On top of that, I also like the variation that Adidas offers within their line because they have the sleek one-piece upper that you get with the X Crazy Fast .1, But if you're looking for something with a slightly more traditional lacing system that's even thinner and lighter, you can go for the X Crazy Fast Plus for a slightly higher cost. Next up on our list, we have probably the most popular football boot that you'll see, and that's the Nike Mercurial Vapor 15, and of course also the Superfly 9. Now the Vapor 15 and the Superfly are essentially going to be the same football boot, just with the Superfly 9 having a slightly higher cut knit collar. Now, while the elite version of the Vapor 15 is going to run you close to $260, depending on whether or not you find this boot on sale, what impressed me the most wasn't actually the most premium version of this football boot, it was actually the takedown models underneath it. Because the Vapor 15 Pro that retails for around $130 and the Vapor 15 Academy, which you can pick up for about $75, are both amazing options. In fact, the Vapor 15 Academy was one of the best takedown boots that I tried on all year. And I think it really showed why Nike is executing better than most other companies when it comes to making solid, reliable takedown boots. Now the Vapor 15 didn't take too many risks adapting from the previous model, but as the saying goes, if it's not broke, don't fix it. However, I will give Nike a little bit of credit as they typically have really snug fitting football boots that in the past may have been a little bit too narrow for me, but with the new Vapor 15, I find that the toe box is just a little bit more anatomical, and it did give me just enough room for my toes. Then the Vaporposit upper that you get on the premium version feels really soft, premium, and it gives you a great connection on the ball. And even on the lower priced takedown versions, you're going to get a thin, soft, and comfortable upper. And another thing I like about this Nike model is that they offer multiple versions of their sole plates in FG, AG, and turf variations. And offering AG models isn't something enough other brands are doing. Up next on our list, we have the Mizuno Melia Neo 4 Beta. Now you can pick up the made in Japan version of this boot for close to $300, but in my opinion, I think you should save your money and just get the elite version that I have here, which runs you about $150. Because having seen and held both boots, I honestly struggle to tell the difference despite the fact that one costs $150 more. Now the Neo 4 Beta is a hybrid leather synthetic football boot, so it's going to have really soft kangaroo leather towards the toe box, then it's going to transition into a synthetic material towards the midfoot that's really, really thin. And then running just underneath the lacing system and around the collar, you're going to have a really stretchy, soft knit material. Now what makes the Neo 4 Beta such a great football boot is that it has all of these different materials, and each one of them is just executed on so well. So the kangaroo leather you get in the toe box is really plush, premium, and high quality. And then the synthetic material you have in the midfoot is just so thin. And then obviously that knit collar gives you the perfect amount of lockdown and softness across your feet. And all of the parts of the boot where those materials are connected, it's just really, really well done. And if you've ever worn a pair of Mizuno boots before, you know that build quality is one of their strong points. I also appreciate that the standard version of the Beta Elite here comes with this pretty aggressive sole plate that has conical studs that are good for use on both firm ground and artificial grass. I do think Mizuno could have toned back a little bit on the rigidity of the sole plate because these are nearly impossible to bend at the midfoot area, but other than that, this is the best speed boot model that Mizuno has to offer. Now next up, we got the New Balance 442 V2 Pro. Now these are the boots that I wore for the majority of last year, and honestly in 2024, New Balance still hasn't refreshed this line. But they don't really have that much to do because this is already such a solid leather football boot. Even at its full retail price of about $130, this boot has a surprisingly soft and premium kangaroo leather upper, and you can almost always find the 442s on sale for less than that. And what I think is really cool about the 442s here is that they're kind of deceptive, because when you just look at them from afar, or maybe if you look at them when you're browsing online, they seem like just a really traditional, kind of bulky even, leather football boot. But that's far from the case when you see these boots in person, because they are extremely lightweight. In fact, they're only a few grams heavier than the Vapor 15 from Nike. And the main reason why they're so light isn't just because they have a pretty thin kangaroo leather upper, but they also have an aggressive and really snappy sole plate as well. And then New Balance just got a lot of the little things right with this model as well. I think the tongue is somehow one of the most premium that I've felt in a while. And then they even added an extra little lace hole to the side of the boot here if you wanted to create a runner's loop and get even more lockdown. But of all of the great things about this boot, the thing that I have to end on is just the comfort. These are so comfortable. I have them in the wide variation here, and this is the widest toe box I have ever seen on a mass-produced football boot. And for that reason, when most people with wider feet ask me for recommendations, I usually push them towards the 442 or another New Balance model. I'd say they did take around 2 to 3 wears to break in towards the heel area, but once you get past that point, they are extremely comfortable and very fun to play in. All right, we're down to number 5, and for the next boot on our list, we have the Mizuno Melia 2. Now, similar to the Neo 4 Beta I discussed earlier, you can get the made in Japan version of this boot and pay around $280. It's an amazing football boot, or you can do what I did and pay around $140 for the Elite version that I have here. And with that Elite version, you are going to get such a soft, plush, pliable, and premium kangaroo leather football boot. There's a few of the boots on this list that require absolutely no break-in time, and this is one of them. And while Mizuno makes a lot of great football boots, I would argue that this is what they do best. Just really simple, high-quality leather, attention to detail, craftsmanship, and a very comfortable boot. If you're looking for a razor-thin, barefoot-like, minimal experience, you're not going to get that from the Mizuno Melia 2. However, what you are going to get is a really natural, plush, and more padded feel on the ball. So if you're a big fan of traditional leather football boots, but you haven't given Mizuno a try, the Melia 2 is an amazing place to start. All right, we're down to number 4, and we have another boot that I recently reviewed with the TMO Legend 10 from Nike. Now, this is the Emerald Edition that just launched a couple weeks ago that has these beautiful diamond textured patterns throughout the upper. But the same things I'm saying about this boot applies to the standard Legend 10 that you can get currently at a discount. Now, when Nike announced about 2 years ago that they were going to move the TMO line to a full synthetic, I think it upset and concerned a lot of people because the TMO for a long time has just been synonymous with leather. And while I was really skeptical when I tried on the Legend 10 for the first time, I have to say it's surprisingly impressive what Nike have been able to do with the synthetic fly touch that's on this boot. I mean, it just kind of looks and feels like real leather. I don't know exactly how they were able to do it, but they definitely put a lot of effort into it. But I think that the fly touch upper and the fact that the TMOs moved from leather to synthetic kind of overshadows what's actually the best thing about this boot, and that's the comfort that you get from this knit inner liner that runs through the center of the boot here. This is one of the most comfortable boots I have tried on in a while, and they just start from such a strong point with this inner liner because it connects the entire boot together. So the inner liner sits directly above your midfoot, and it just wraps all around the collar of the boot. And I think that nailing this knit material is so important for the overall comfort of the boot, and it's something that some brands don't take enough time to focus on. Usually, I'm a fan of traditional lacing systems that just have a standard tongue and a U-throat design, but the Legend 10 kind of challenged my view of that because the lockdown that you get from the knit inner liner means that you don't really have to adjust these lacing systems that much, and I think I actually like this more than a traditional tongue. That being said, there's no such thing as a perfect football boot, and if I could make one improvement to the Legend 10, it would just be making the top of the toe box just a little bit wider, because then I think the fit would be a lot more accommodating for more people. And then moving on to number 3, we have an old favorite. It's the Nike Premere 3. Now, is the Nike Premere the best leather football boot that you can get? No. But for whatever reason, I often find myself coming back to this model. Because while it might not necessarily be the highest quality or the most durable football boot of all time, it's so comfortable, the leather is so soft, and I love the aesthetic of this boot. And despite the fact that the Premere 3 is the cheapest premium model in Nike's lineup, I think it's the most comfortable. Even slightly more comfortable than the Legend 10 we were just talking about. Compared to other Nike models that might be a little bit too slim for some people, I find that the Nike Premere 3 actually has a decent amount of volume towards the toe box. And since these boots are made from full kangaroo leather, they are going to stretch a little bit over time and mold to the shape of your feet. They ship stock with a fold-over tongue that gives them a nice retro aesthetic. I played with that tongue for about 6 to 7 months before ultimately cutting it off, which it does give you the guidelines to do. And once you cut that tongue off, it transforms into a slightly more modern looking boot. And the Premere has a pretty playful sole plate that does have a little bit of give to it, which I appreciate, and I like the fact that it's all conical studs so I can play comfortably on both FG and AG. Overall, I just think that the Nike Premere 3, as well as the previous generations of the Premere, they just strike such a good balance between old and new. And on top of that, around $100, they're still great value. And then moving on to number 2, we have the New Balance Tequila V4 Pro. And we're talking about the laceless variation and the laced variation. Now, if you want the best laceless football boot that you can get, you should go with the Tequila V4 Pro, and it's not even close. While some of the laceless models from Adidas are solid, the comfort, lockdown, and performance you get from the Tequilas are going to be unrivaled. But if you want a more well-rounded, lower-cut laced version, you can go with the Tequila V4 Pro Low Edition. This is just such an all-round impressive football boot. It feels as premium as you would expect for a boot that retails for around $220 full price, but you can also often find certain colorways on sale. Now, the upper on the Tequilas isn't going to be quite as razor thin as the Furon V7. Instead, it's going to offer a little bit more substance to it. And for me personally, I love the way the upper was executed on the Tequilas. They have a nice sleek matte finish, but they also have some added texture elements on the sides to give you some more grip on the ball when you're shooting or passing. And then the Tequilas also have one of the most unique sole plates I've seen on any football boot. It features almost all conical studs towards the center of the boot, and then bladed studs at the perimeter that you can use for getting more grip when you're taking off on a sprint. Now, a lot of companies claim to have sole plate innovations with every new model, but this is actually what a sole plate innovation looks like. And on top of all of that, the Tequilas, similar to the other New Balance models that we talked about, have such an anatomical fit and a really comfortable, roomy toe box. And of course, if you're interested, you can also get them in a wide variation. And before we move on to our number 1 boot, we have a couple honorable mentions. First up, we got the Nike Phantom GX2. This boot is extremely unique, and the grip knit upper is something I've never seen before. It's going to give you more stickiness than any other football boot on the entire market, so if that's something you're into, they're definitely worth checking out. And then another honorable mention, I have the Prevolv Bio cleats. These are custom 3D printed football boots that I got a couple months ago, and they are so fun to play in and extremely comfortable. Now, that being said, because these are individually made based on your own specifications, they do come in at quite a hefty price tag of around $500. So until the prices come down, they're probably not going to be available for most players, but it's an extremely cool concept. They're great boots, so I had to shout them out. And then finally, at number 1, it's my current favorite pair of football boots, the Adler Henzos. Now, Adler is a smaller Japanese company that I only heard about through word of mouth from some other players. So although I did hear some good things, I didn't really know what to expect when I ordered these a few months ago. But man, ever since these arrived, I have been so impressed with these boots. Now, what makes these interesting is that they're not really a traditional leather boot compared to some of the other models on this list. For example, when you look at the Nike Premere or the Mizuno Melia, they kind of feature these soft, plush, and padded leather uppers, something that you would expect. However, the leather on the Adler isn't really like that. This upper is crazy thin, and it gives you a closer touch on the ball than any other leather football boot that I've tried. And there's just something about striking the ball with these boots that just feels so good that it's hard to describe. And despite the fact I've been playing in these pretty frequently, the stitching throughout this upper has held up so well, and I don't see even a little bit of sole separation. And even on more expensive football boots, sole separation towards the front of the boot can be really common. And then another thing I really appreciate about the Adlers here is that the sole plate isn't too aggressive, so it does allow for a little bit of bend towards the midfoot area. And for me, I find that that just allows my feet to move a lot more naturally when I'm playing, and it results in just less overall fatigue. Now, I haven't tried every leather model in the world, but I'm very close to saying that the Henzo might be the perfect leather football boot for me. And retailing for about $150, I also think it's a pretty good deal. So if you're ever interested in trying on a football boot outside of the big brands, the Adler Henzo is the first one I'd recommend. And that is going to do it for this video. Let me know in the comments if you've got to try on any of these boots and what your favorite is. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.